Good morning, everyone. We say good morning because we normally have an opportunity to be together to start something, either a perspective or an action in a new way. As a morning, we start a new day. And today we do that with Mark through our podcast Grow with Jen, where we invite our friends who believe and who have been a great example of working on themselves and making an impact. And I have a long list of Mark achievement and impact, but I think let's Mark to come out and share with us why Mark is here with us.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It was great meeting you at the National University of Singapore Entrepreneurs event last week, and I enjoyed hearing you speak, and I'm thrilled to be on your show. So how would you like me to talk about my background?
You have more than 20, or how many? You have the experience to start more than 25 companies and with 6 different books. And for sure that you are now in Vietnam. So I'm really grateful that you are here with us. So what would be the 3 things that you think that you're really proud of yourself? You call it dreams and you already achieve it, because our topic today is about turning your dream to reality, especially by developing and igniting the entrepreneur spirit. And I believe everyone who is joining us on live now, or maybe later on, always has something that they want to do. Either we call a dream or a goal or maybe a target. So 3 things that you're proud of yourself.
Well,
You turn to
aside from
reality.
being a father of 2 daughters, if we're talking about the business side of things, I guess the first thing is that I started the world's first formally organized investor angel network. So prior to 1990, when I started the Pennsylvania Private Investors Group, if you were an entrepreneur and wanted to meet somebody rich to invest in your company, it was impossible. If you didn't know someone, there was no group to call and say, hey, I have a business plan and I would like to share it with you and hope that you might invest in my company. So I started that in 1990, and that what was great also was I got in the cover of Profit magazine and got a lot of publicity, and now we saw angel groups literally all over the world. And I'm hoping that while I'm here in Vietnam that I'll start another angel group to help Vietnamese entrepreneurs get started, because I think Vietnam can be like Singapore or Israel. I think that the people are really smart, hardworking. So that's why I came here. The second thing that I did was I started the first virtual incubator. So I'd started Penn State's Technology Development Center, and we ran out of space pretty quickly, and entrepreneurs wanted access to our services, and I was running a lot of educational programs for entrepreneurs. And I said, what if people paid, but they just don't have space here? So I started the first virtual incubator as well. So those 2 things. And then I guess the third thing that I'm probably most proud of is that I wrote a book called Small Business Turnaround, and it was the very first book that was ever written to show a small business how to turn around a company. And I had written a book from McGraw-Hill called Power Networking, and they had the option for my second book. And they said, nobody's going to read this book. I mean, who wants a book on how to turn around a small business? So I wrote to 47 publishers, and I said to all the publishers, I will actually pay for whatever you don't sell. You don't have to give me an advance, and I will cover your losses. And still, everybody said no. And then my publisher, McGraw-Hill, said, you know, we know a guy at Adams Media, which was a big business book publisher, and his name is Jerry Calmes, and Jerry ran a small business that got in trouble. I think Jerry, who used to be one of our editors, would be interested. So they sent it to Jerry. He didn't contact me. He just sent back a contract with a check in advance. And so I wrote that book for him. And that book was named one of the 30 best business books in 2000 by Executive Book Summaries. And I got a lot of publicity from that book because nobody had ever written again, a book for small business. So I guess those three things are what I'm most proud of professionally.
Lovely. As you said, professionally. So I really like to come to the under layer, normally I call, which is your personal, where you transform yourself or you turn around yourself, or maybe you call the other word, that you really like go to the next standard or next version of you to make the three things happen. So what would be the very like three things that you found that you turn around regarding yourself as a person to achieve these things? Yeah.
Well, I started my life as a sports writer, and I never wanted to be in business. My father was in business, my grandfather was in business, and I hated the whole idea that you had to work on Saturdays. You know, that seems to me to be totally wrong. And we were on vacation. My father would be calling in all the time. So when I got married, I was married 25 years together, 27 with my ex-wife.
Mm,
And I realized I couldn't afford the life that we wanted to have together. And so I had to make money some way. So I started
mm,
side businesses, and that got me off the ground. And I found I
mm,
had a real knack for starting businesses and getting them off the ground. It turned out that I actually even had this through high school because
mm,
I had taken over the high school paper, turned that around. So I had a real skill in either starting things or fixing them. So I realized then that that was probably my career path, even though I did not want it. You know, most
mm,
people who become entrepreneurs dream of becoming entrepreneurs. I never wanted that life for me. And now my oldest daughter, she has a global communications company,
mm,
and she said, "Dad, I never want to be you. I don't want to be a entrepreneur." And she is as well. So, and my father wanted to be a history teacher, and he was in business. So I guess, having, I learned the ability that you have to adjust in life, that whatever your circumstances are, that you get dealt different hands every day that are with not in your control whatsoever.
mm,
And in life, you've got to be flexible and resilient.
mm,
So those are kinds of things important. And I remember when I was a kid, my father went bankrupt, and that was a horrible time. And that actually impacted me greatly because I was just turning 13 when my dad went bankrupt in his first business. And all of a sudden, it was a light switch. I mean, you went from carefree to very serious and very hardworking. Even
mm.
today, I have this great fear of ending up broken and living on the street every day. It's crazy, but true.
Lovely. You make it to become the one word like adaptation. Would I call that?
I'm resilient and and I adapt. You know,
Mm,
I one time took a test on resiliency,
mm-hmm.
and I scored like the highest score you could possibly score.
Yeah.
And I only think it's because of circumstances. Now, my personality is I'm very calm all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty rare that I would overreact to anything. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very logical. And
Mm,
so I just kind of go with whatever the circumstance is and don't get bent out of shape over it.
mm,
So I think, and I'm very persistent. Like with that book, Small Business Turnaround,
yeah.
I did, I knew this was a good idea and I just wasn't going to give up on it. And I kept writing to people. And I guess at some point, if the market says we're just not interested, well, you don't have any choice there. But I was lucky enough that somebody was interested.
Yeah,
And I think
that's probably would be
everybody,
the place we go later
yeah,
about the persistence and how to deal with saying no and
yeah,
rejection, right? Because I think
yes,
that where normally we start because we're gonna doubt ourselves and other things. We go back a little bit about the part you talk about adaptation or adjusting to things, and you were not an entrepreneur as title itself, but you turn to do that, and you did it pretty great, right? So how could a person, how can a person who actually working on something and then they can go to other things, not because of other people want them, but it's more about the other thing probably can ignite what they have inside. The other things probably can make them be a better version of themselves and still align with the core values. It means that like adaptation, but make sure that it's aligned with your core values and your real true self.
Well, I think, people who usually become entrepreneurs are not in it for the money. They're in it to solve a problem that they see. And it
Mhm,
has nothing to do with money. Every entrepreneur I've interviewed, and I've interviewed hundreds of them, has said, I had this idea and I thought it would really help people. And if money came along, that was great, but that's not why I did it. And so I
mhm,
think that if you have an idea, and you think it could be change somebody's life for the positive, then you've got to go after it and see what you can do. There's a young woman in my class, and she told me, and I really like this idea. She wanted to start a vocational school for
mm,
people with disabilities, and the vocational school would teach them how to do different jobs in a hotel. And then she wanted to have a hotel, and then they would migrate from the vocational school to the hotel, get their trained, and go work for a hotel. And that's all she wants to do is do that. And I thought
mm,
that's great. And I want to support her in that. And that's her life dream. And now she wants to get a master's degree in education so she can set the school up properly. There was
mm,
another young woman that I interviewed, and she had a friend that almost committed suicide. And now she's dedicated to helping students or young people talk to each other about problems so they can catch it. Because she said, she could have killed herself. I would have been
mm,
devastated the rest of my life. So I think we're all driven for the most part, not all
oh,
parts. People buy, Dunkin' Donuts franchises because they think it makes good money. They're not solving a problem, but they think that. But I would say that most of the entrepreneurs that you hear about, like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or uh, anyone, Mary Kay Ashley, who did the cosmetic company, feel that
mm,
they have a calling, and that
yeah.
their calling is to make a difference in people's lives, whatever that is.
Beautiful. I was like trying to use that calling and you did that. So it was like the feeling that you had a calling
Yes.
and igniting that entrepreneurship spirit is really have to turn that to the reality and impact. So if anyone who listening right now, and if you can just write down what have been going through your mind over and over again and it's important, maybe you want to do something about it, and probably going to the entrepreneurial part can really make it to become like the impact. So for you, how was that process of you starting a company as the first time? Did you succeed right away? If you could remind me, and how did you know that you want to go to the next one and the next
I,
one, the next one?
I'm an idea guy, and it turns out my head's like a popcorn machine for ideas, and I'm always
So who's
coming
gonna
up.
be the one who could catch it?
Yeah, and I'm always coming up with new ideas. I walk down the street and I see things and I go, oh, well, we can make this better. We could do these things. And by the way,
Mm,
my own calling is to help other entrepreneurs. I really found that in
mm,
my life that I was even better at coaching entrepreneurs and helping them achieve than actually doing just my own ventures. And I really
mm,
love helping people. I really do feel that's my calling. So I think that um, what happens is that everybody asks this question: are entrepreneurs born, or can they be developed?
mm,
I think it falls somewhere in the middle, and I think what it is that people come up with ideas and then they feel like, I'm not really a business person, or I know an entrepreneur, but I don't look like them. But that's not the case.
yes.
You come up with the idea and you should go and pursue it. I tell people all the time, go, you're only going to regret it if you don't take the step
Yeah.
forward. And I
Mm.
think it's so important that people in life, because life goes by so quick, you just can't even imagine. Like yesterday, I was your age. Literally yesterday,
Yes.
I was I was
Tomorrow
30,
I'm your age.
35 years old, and now I'm 62, and I just can't fathom it. But I have to say this, that I never wake up any single day, not even for a second, thinking I've cheated myself in my own experiences in life, that I have done maximize my potential by just trying. I think
Mm,
that's what I tell people, because I have friends who tell me, "Oh, I'm going to write a book." I have a friend in South America. He's talked about the same book for like 18 years and hasn't written a word. I just said, just put some words on a paper, and every day just put a few more words.
yep.
And I think that's the people that don't get there is because they're afraid of failure and they're
Mm-hmm.
not disciplined. I think being
Mm-hmm.
disciplined is really important, just like
Yes.
exercise or whatever. You have to keep doing it over and over, and you'll get better at it. Don't
Yeah.
be afraid of failure.
Mm-hmm. And do it over and over again, because it's not about we go into the gym for one day and then we start, right? It's just like every day 10 minutes or every day 20 minutes. Yeah, it's a long run.
Yeah, I mean, I typically work out an hour 6 days a week. Now I'm a type 2 diabetic, and so there's like zero choice in doing that. But I
Mm,
find that having that discipline to do it gives me discipline to do a bunch of other things as
mm,
well. I mean, I have a podcast called The Best Business Minds. If I was
mm.
asked for the fourth thing, I would have said that. And I started that during the pandemic.
Oh,
And because just to keep people engaged. I mean,
yeah.
I'd never even listened to a podcast before, and I didn't
Oh,
even know that they weren't live. Like mine's live every Friday, but we
okay.
went from nothing to where we have listeners in 73 countries, won 6 international awards, and I'm
Congratulations.
literally booked till November of 2024. Every Friday is booked until
Oh,
then. And and I didn't let it stop. I just took the step forward. I called a friend who was an author and
mm,
I said, "Hey, can I interview tomorrow?" And she said yes. If I kept waiting till everything was perfect, or think, do I really want to do that? Do I want to hear people, will anybody tune in? I just believe you jump in and see what happens.
lovely. We have a lot of keywords here, and it could be a big topic for our discussion. Like, this is started even you don't feel that you're ready, or you don't feel that everything is prepared well. But it's about like on the way you're gonna make it better. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm starting a new podcast in Vietnam called Asian Founders and Funders.
Mhm.
And I came on campus and I said, "This is what I want to do." I wrote it up, and now we're going to launch like in a week or so, but the website's done. I meet tomorrow, we get it done.
Congratulations.
I'm already lining up um, people to be on the show, which I'm going to come back to you because you're an entrepreneur as well, to have you on my show. So I get to ask the questions.
Lovely. Well, so we go back to the original question where we lead to this one. It was about how did you start the very first business and how did you decide to go to the next one? So I could summarize it as like it's like a marathon. And
Well,
you
I have to
yeah.
say, the very first business, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, is that when my father went bankrupt, I knew that money wasn't going to be easy. And
Mm,
I needed, of course, walking around money. And I had been a huge sports fan. And
mm,
so I started as a bookie. I started taking bets from other middle school kids,
mm,
and I had two partners, and we actually made really good money doing it until the vice principal owed me money and he wouldn't pay up.
mm,
And he gave me a choice of either stopping being a bookie and writing for the school paper,
uh,
picking sports teams that would succeed. So, and I ended up doing that. But then when I have been, my entrepreneurial desire was dormant for a long time until I got married at 23 and realized he had needed money. And I started Marc Kramer Promotions, Build Your Business with Bumper Stickers. And I went to 37 businesses and they all turned me down. So I
mm,
changed the name to Marc Kramer Promotions. We can get anything. So I had to pivot. And the first 6 clients I had bought bumper stickers from me. I mean, who would have guessed? But one of my early clients was a 200 store mall that was looking for a haunted house. And so I went to the owner and I told him that I could get this for him. And I did. And at the end of the evening, he was so happy with what I did. He said, "How about if you join me as my assistant manager?" And he fired his assistant manager because the guy didn't get the job done. I ended up becoming assistant manager,
mm.
general manager, chief operating officer, all like within a year and a half time period.
Wow.
So that was my first business, was this Marc Kramer promotions. And then I started a Penn State's Technology Development Center, and then I started something called the Eastern Technology Council, a trade association for technology companies, and the Pennsylvania Private Investors Group. So I'm good at conceptualizing ideas, writing the plan for them, and getting them off the ground.
Mm. So how could you decide like you would go to the path where you probably creative in businesses, or you could focus on one business and make it like continue growing?
Well, I would come up with ideas and write the plan and just focus on the one business and get that off the ground. I mean, sometimes I'm working on 3 things simultaneously, but some people are wired differently. I am wired differently. If
Mm,
I'm not working on 5, 6 things at one time, I become very disorganized. I learned it in
mm,
college. I took a semester off, focused on my grades, worst semester ever. And then I realized that's what I needed to do. And then when I would get investment, the people who really understood me well would tell the investors, he really needs to work on like 5 things simultaneously, or he's very disorganized. And
mm.
that's true to this day. I mean, I'll be, working on multiple businesses and classes and a lot of things, and I can keep all the plates spinning. But if I had to work on one, I would keep breaking the plate.
Okay, so it's really about understanding what best for you, and there's a no formula for everyone, right? So
That's
if
right. I only
and it,
sleep 5.5 hours a day. So some people say you need 8. I'm front loading all my time. I'll probably be dead at 70 because I'll be like
uh,
90 years old in times
yeah,
of
it's just
time.
interesting. Like my sister said, when I left like 2 or 3 hours when I was student, and I was like a and like a vampire. I
Y-
was even more energetic when I did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I go to sleep late. I wake up in the morning. I go to sleep happy. I wake up happy. I'm the same way
Mm,
every day.
yeah. So it's really about like tuning into yourself and really understanding, feeling you. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm understanding. I think, you have to understand what your own motivations are, what will get you
mm,
up and excited in the morning. I mean, I feel really blessed. My whole adult life, I basically got to do what I wanted to do. There was never a
yeah.
time that I had to do something just to do it. I mean, I've always had to make money, so I took on some projects that maybe I
Mhm.
wasn't excited about, but essentially I've gotten to do what I want to do. And one of the biggest blessings was getting to come here to Vietnam. I always wanted to work in Asia. And
Mhm.
I just got lucky that VinUnivesrsity was looking for an English speaking entrepreneurship professor.
Wow. So everything kind of connected as a dots because you like you prepare each dot by yourself and then everything connected at some point. So if you need to look back and connect the dots in your life, if we look at the edges, even you're very young and you have very like great energy. But if we look at our forward in life, a city like you will break it down into different stages. How could you break it down? Like, for example, 13 years old, 14 years old, 50, or how did you break it down? Different
Well, I
stages
guess
of
if
your
you
life.
had to break it down, there were teenage years of which I basically thought I'd just be a career sports writer, and then my early
Mm,
20s when I was, and then right after, let's say I was 22, then I started to become an entrepreneur because I had
mm,
to financially start
mm,
things to bring in extra money. And
mm,
then I found that I had a knack for developing ideas and launching them.
mm,
So that's kind of what let me in. But I have to say this, and people should know this. Look, in life, you have to have a right place, right time, and have to get lucky. You could do all the planning you want. I mean, you can't get lucky without showing up. You got to show up for sure.
mm.
But most everything comes down to that I didn't make any of these choices, myself. It just happened the way it happened. I mean, I just wish I could say that I had some like real control over any of this, but I didn't, because every good thing that happened in my life,
Mm.
I did not prepare for it. It just kind of happened.
But you
And
had intention, right? Where you prepare some way in the other way.
Well,
And
I
then,
think I was prepared for success in the fact
mm,
that I worked hard at it. I've always been a big reader. I've always sought out mentors. I always looked to keep bettering myself. But
mm-hmm,
at the end of the day, I mean, you hear Bill Gates and Warren Buffett when they said, what do you say is the key to your success? And they all said luck. I mean, because there's no way, if you look at Bill Gates, he tried to sell half of Microsoft to IBM for $500,000 and they turned him down. And that was the
mm,
luckiest thing that ever happened to him, was them turning him down.
yeah,
My job with the Wharton School only happened because a woman from my synagogue spent 1 year at the Wharton School, and
mm,
a guy's wife went to premature labor 6 weeks in advance, and they needed someone to go to Peru. And
mm,
she knew I had a home in Panama. And so she called me and said, would you be interested in working for the Wharton School?
mm,
And crazy, but when she called me, I said, absolutely. And I went to work. The kid that was born, that came six
mm,
weeks premature, is now my business partner in a
mm.
venture in the metaverse. Think about that. How crazy is that, that all those things kind of worked out the way they did?
Yeah, so I just feel like maybe some of us, if we use the word luck, we would feel like we don't really do things. But I would see that you have done a lot and you prepare for success, as you say, because you work on things that matter and you're willing to receive and you're willing to give. So it's like the other things just come to make that picture complete
Well,
because
I'm
you have already done it.
intentional
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I'm
yeah.
intentional in trying to be successful. You can't sit on the couch and success will come to you. That's impossible. But I
Yeah.
think when you put yourself out there, look, even being on your show, a year ago, I had no idea I'd be in Vietnam. And when I came to Vietnam, I had no idea that I would meet you and be on your show. Just
Yeah.
circumstances put us together, right?
Thank you for the universe, or what do you call,
Yeah.
like some kind of shared values.
Yes.
So if you look at the entrepreneurial journey, could you see different kind of stages of the entrepreneurial spirit? It's kind of like if we try to put it in the way where the level goes up, because I believe that as you work on that journey, you evolve and everything get to the next standard. So if you put it into the way of different level of the spirit of entrepreneur, how could you do that? Yeah.
Well, I think it's building blocks, right?
Mm,
You start out with the first venture and you learn a lot from that first venture. I
mm,
mean, I'm 62 and I'm still learning. And every phase you keep thinking, you're like, oh, now I know everything. And then you find out that that's not the case. And and
mm,
and and you really can't succeed as an entrepreneur or in life in general if you're not open to constant learning. So I kind of think that you go through these phases, or time periods in your life, that you start things and you learn from them, and and then you build on that to get you to the next place and the next place and the next place. But if you are shut off to learning and you're not open to hearing what other people say or watching what other people do, then
mm.
you'll find that you've leveled off. And
Ah,
I think that that's not, you don't want to be in that position. I mean, I think that's what I get the most out of meeting entrepreneurs of all ages. At 62, I actually don't think I know, I have more experience than you because I've accumulated more experience, but it doesn't mean that I can't learn from you or that you don't have ideas that I think I could use in whatever I'm doing. So I think that's a real positive trait for me, that I'm
mm,
open to this.
yeah. So consistent and continuous learning. So
Yeah.
if we kind of think about it as a string to connect all the qualities over time, right? Because we keep learning no matter where we are,
But
and
some
then
people stop, and just like
some people stop.
corporations stop. I mean, you take a look at, Sears was this monster department store, and Walmart was nothing. It was just a, local
Mm,
department store in small towns. And who is alive? Walmart. They're the biggest
mm,
retailer on the planet. Who's
mm,
dead? Sears. And if you take a look at so many global brand names like Kodak that really don't
mm,
exist anymore, The reason people fail, or the reason corporations fail, is you stop evolving and you stop
Mm,
learning. And if you do, you can be evolving until the day you die if
mm,
you're open to it. But if you're not, then you're going to find out you're going to be really disappointed.
mm. So did you have that, or you had to practice that mindset? Because
I
that is
think
like a role
I,
mindset.
I have to say, I think this mindset came because I wasn't the smartest. I think my friends
Mm,
who were really brilliant people um, were basically, they couldn't see how they topped themselves. Like they already thought they had arrived. And
mm,
I myself, not being the smartest, felt like I could learn from a lot of people and that I just had to keep
yeah.
evolving all the time, learning new stuff, adding on new skills, all this type of thing. And I think that was a real advantage for me, not being the smartest. If you notice that the greatest coaches in sports were not the best players, typically they're not. And so they're much more open to learning about a variety of different things.
Oh,
So I think that's a real key.
so if somebody really like kind of smart, I don't know the definition of that, and I don't really like using that word. So if we keep the mindset of being humble and keep learning, how
Yes.
can a person who actually really, really great and they really great can actually also adopt this mindset?
Well, I've met students while I've been interviewing in the interview process who scored over 1,500 boards. And this one student really impressed me. And he had like 1,550 boards, so almost perfect.
Mm,
And he said, I'm always seeking out new mentors and new
mm,
advice from people. I know I can make the decisions, but I want to hear as many new things as I can. So
mm,
he's on a constant quest of new knowledge. And I
mm,
think that's a real positive for him. And that he's constantly trying to better himself. He doesn't look
yeah.
at like he's arrived or he feels that he doesn't need to know more. And I've
Mm,
met entrepreneurs who feel like, what are you going to tell me? I'm brilliant. Like, I mean, I'm smart enough. I can figure it out.
uh-huh.
Those, those are the ones that typically don't make it in the long term. I
Yeah.
mean, as brilliant as Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk are, and, you can name other famous entrepreneurs, the one thing that they all have is they're good listeners and that they like to hear what other people have to say. They don't think that they know everything. They may even think they're the smartest in the room,
Mm,
but they're smart enough to know that there are people who know things they just don't know or don't
mm.
see.
Lovely. So I think it's really about like listening to you or somebody that you don't meet and actually listen to what they have to say and gain new perspectives and knowing that like we cannot do it all and we cannot get it all, but we can like be open to get it from the people who figure out their own way in a way, and then we see like, oh, there's a lot of things out there. So with that, like, I try to put it in some way where people can imagine. If you need to talk to like a entrepreneur at the age of 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 about the qualities that they should adapt, or maybe I like to put in like habits, the habits that they should actually develop. Being like a long life learner is one of, but apart from that, if you need to break it down, the qualities in each decade of people's life.
I would say constantly reading,
Okay.
going and listening to other entrepreneurs talk about their adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say that seeking people out that are smarter and have different experiences than them and asking a lot of questions. I think throughout life, you should be constantly asking questions and
Mm-hmm.
open to new ideas. So I think you can keep evolving as an entrepreneur and as a person if in fact you're always reading things, listening to podcasts like yours, to going
Or
to
yours.
events. Oh, thank you. Going to events and hearing other entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
speak. And when there's new things that come up, don't be afraid of them, embrace them,
Yeah.
and want to learn as much as you can. And it's actually fun. I mean, people are forgetting that the more they challenge themselves, the more fun they're going to go and have. If you're not challenging yourself, you're taking away the best opportunity to really enjoy life and have a great experience.
Thank you. So what about turning all the things that you listen and you learn to become like an action, and then evaluating that to make sure that it's something is for you? What is that process for you?
My process is I like writing everything down. So I like to say I like to put paint on the canvas, and I literally write plans all the time, and I put together financial models. I usually start with a financial model first to see if it makes
Oh.
economic sense. And my financial models are incredibly detailed. Like I've raised money on just financial models. Like I raised $3.2 billion for a
Yeah.
company called Prompt Payment. And I came up with this concept of reverse factoring. And I spent months, a few months developing this model and said, wow, this thing can make a lot of money. Sometimes I develop a model and look at it and say, there's no way to make money here. So I kill it off. So then after I've developed the model, okay, now I start developing the plan around it. And I put together, need to be able to say in one sentence or two, what's the problem I'm solving? And if I can't explain it in a way that my mom can explain it to her mahjong group,
Oh.
then I know I'm not doing it. Then I know that there's an issue with that. Then I write down the solution. Then I do market research to see, is there really a market? Is it growing? What's the opportunities? And after I do that, I write a marketing strategy and tactics to see how I go about pursuing this. And do I have the capability? Can I hire people? Can I get strategic partners? And then I look at sales, because sales is different than marketing. And then I list all the revenue streams, because I've come across in my life companies who think that the primary revenue stream is where they're going to make money, and find out that 6 revenue streams down was really where they were going to make the money. So I like to figure out every way I can make money. Then I look at the competition. I never am afraid of competition. In fact, I worry when there isn't competition. So like I one time I started the first insurance product to insure small business bank accounts against cyber theft. And I got supported, financed by a big insurance company. And they said, what's your biggest concern? I said, lack of competition. And the guy looked at me like he
no
laughed.
demand.
Yeah. And he goes, he turns to the president division. He goes, did we invest in an idiot? Like, who would want competition? And I explained to him that without competition, I would be spending all the money he gave me in educating the market, and I would eventually run out and somebody else would run over me. I said, if you look in history, all the great success stories were not the first. Mark Zuckerberg wasn't first in social, and Google wasn't in search, you just name them. Other people were before them, but they spent all the money essentially educating the market, and they run out, and the next guy comes in and takes their spot. So I think, that's really important. And then I go and figure out what's my retention strategy? How am I going to get people to come back? And the whole 10 years I taught at Wharton, my students never had a retention strategy. And so I said, it's one thing to sell them, but how are you going to keep them coming back? And then I list my management team and what kind of skill sets that they need to have, or the people I need to bring on board. And then it's the financial model. And then how much capital will I need? And how much equity am I going to, give up if I have to raise money? If not, then I'm not worried about capital or exit strategy. So that's the process that I go through. And I can usually write a plan in about 4 to 8 weeks, because
So
I
it's
need to
like you
talk to
prepare
people.
very well, and
I'm incredibly disciplined about starting stuff. And my big thing is, it's not going to be perfect. Just get it off the ground and see what happens. You can fix things along the way. So don't look for perfection, because if you do, you'll never get anything off the ground.
Well, lovely. I really enjoy the part where you say that you prepare and you make it as simple and as clear as your mom can talk to very like young group.
Yeah, to her
And then
mahjong group.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like talking to my niece and my nephew, right? And What about like you talk about the order financial model and marketing strategy and retention strategies. It's really interesting, making me feel like, is this because that is a thing to make the entrepreneur who actually turn things to become reality and still can sustain financially? Because I know there's a part of entrepreneur where focus a lot on the impact and myself, and then really not like doing well the financial aspect. Uh, Is this the reason why you put in the financial model as the first step? That
Yes, it's the biggest mistake. Everybody starts with a problem and the solution, and they work their way. And at the last thing they do is the financial model. And really, the financial model should be first. I one time worked for the chief marketing officer of a Fortune 50 company, and
yeah.
she had this idea on nutrition that she wanted to do in supermarkets. And so I said, let me write the financial model first to see if it's feasible. No, I know it's going to be great. I said, trust me, let's just do this. Well,
Mm,
once we did the model, we realized, and she put this blue ribbon panel together of experts, realized couldn't make any money because she
mm,
was looking to sell a service to moms,
yeah.
and the moms were not going to be coming into the store at 7 o'clock in the morning and come in through 7 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. You
Mm,
only had them 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And
mm,
when you looked at that, you realize, hey, I can't make any money doing this.
mm,
So that was was a good way to figure it out early. I have to say that even when you look at problems and you see a problem that needs solving, sometimes people won't pay for problems
yeah.
to be solved. They just don't see the value. I started something called Funding Organizer because I helped 5 of my clients get bank loans from 250,000 to 12 million. And every bank was doing it the same way. They'd hand you a PDF form and ask you for 3 years of tax returns. And if they like it, then they would have you give them information every day. And it would
Mm,
take 4 to 8 weeks to get this done.
mm,
And I would say to the banks, why isn't there a link on your website that I just click on, fill in every conceivable question, and then you could tell me if I could get it? Why am I being tortured for 4 to 8 weeks when I
mm,
need this money now to do this? So I worked with 10 bankers and I created Funding Organizer,
mm.
a comprehensive way for loan officers to collect all the information in one day, not 4 to 8
Oh.
weeks. I could not get a single bank, including the banks that helped me design it, to
Mm,
even beta test it. So
mm,
clearly, here was a problem that I thought should be solving, that the banks were basically saying, I don't want to pay to solve it. I'm happy just the way it is. And I
mm,
could not, I tried 35 different banks. Nobody was interested. They were
mm,
interested in receiving applications from me if I solicited entrepreneur business owners, but I didn't want to be in that business for a lot of different reasons. So you learn different things as you go along. And
mm.
at the end of the day, you hope that whatever you've come up with, it resonates with other people and they feel it's valuable to them.
And that's why they pay for that.
Yeah.
And that's
e-
why you can sustain your mission and your purpose, or what do you call, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Otherwise, you're
mean,
gonna run out of or burn out like the first mover
yeah.
of before.
Yeah. Blow all, you spend all
Yeah.
the money and then you've got nothing
Mm,
left. And now the other guy takes over your position.
lovely. Thank you for that. And I think like we're gonna choose one or two topics that we bring you back to really deeper. And
Sure.
we have opportunities to meet you maybe through our Hanoi Entrepreneur community offline. I hope that I have sent you and like ask for your exception on that. But I come back a little bit here. I feel like the the part when you talk about competition, and I really love when you talk about the aspect of the first mover and the second one and the one who actually now perceived as the first one, but actually there's somebody did it before in a way to really educate the market,
Right.
and maybe the market was not ready to really go to that stage. But I also like to put the part of having the mindset of loving the competition because it's a sign that people need it, and because you have the infinitive mindset, what I borrow from Simon Sinek, right? It's like the infinitive mindset is like consistent learning, and you're okay with actually having somebody doing it because you're gonna continue doing it better compared to yourself. So that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your question again for me?
That is a kind of affirmation on that point about consistent learning and having the infinitive mindset to love to have competition, because that's how you keep evolving together and making things better. So that is kind of like my confirmation on that point.
Well, I mean, I think, competition's not only good for educating the market, but it makes you better.
Yeah,
When you have someone else, it makes your whole team better. And that's really critical
yeah,
because I think for years, when people didn't have competition, they didn't stretch themselves
yeah.
and didn't try to get better. I mean, you take a look years ago. I mean, you're way too young to remember this, but there was a company called Netscape that was the
Mm,
first like the first kind of Google.
yeah.
And Netscape was huge and they own 98% of the market. Now they don't exist. And
Mm,
Alta Vista doesn't exist. All these search engines. There was once about, I guess, 20 different search engines, each with enormous amounts of money behind them. And what do we have? One survivor,
yeah.
basically Google. Bing is really nothing. It's just Google, right? I mean, that's what
Mm,
we do. There was Friendster, then MySpace, and then Facebook. The lone
mm,
survivor, Facebook.
yeah.
And in the car industry, there was once 60, 70 different car manufacturers in the United States. There's three.
Mm,
So this is what happens when you're not constantly evolving. Eventually, you end up disappearing.
yeah. And I was like talking about this story yesterday with the infinitive mindset, which is continuous learning. When Simon Sinek, he was sharing the story that he had a June from Microsoft, and then he was talking at Apple, and then he had a chance to go with the Apple guy on the car, and he talked about, oh, the June is been better than the iPod many years ago, right?
Yeah.
And the executive said, like, I had no doubt. So the conversation was over because the executive from Apple, he had a kind of infinitive mindset, and he knew that he would continue being better. And after that, Apple then like introduced iPhone, and it was like they know that they're going to be better than themselves tomorrow, and that,
Well, they keep
yeah,
challenging themselves. But if you take a look at Zoom, do you know the guy who developed Zoom was the
mm,
guy who developed Cisco systems,
um,
um, voiced video conferencing. And he came and he went to the leadership at Cisco and said, we've had the same system for a long time, even though I developed it. I think we can take it to another level. And they just were not interested. And he showed them what became Zoom, and Zoom's a $12 billion valued
wow,
company. And he could not convince them that they should get to the next level with it.
mm,
And these stories permeate entrepreneurial history. I knew a guy who ran a medical device company, and he had worked for IBM, and IBM had this medical section of the business. And he told them, this is where it's going to go. And they were like, we're
mm,
not interested. And he ended up building a $2 billion business called Shared Medical Systems that went public, very successful. And then that company got sold. So, if you're not in a constant frame of mind of learning, evolving, and that just doesn't mean your whole organization
yeah,
has to keep doing it. When people settle, like especially over time, you find that people say, you know what, why fix the wheel? It works perfect, or whatever that saying
mm,
is. If you're not constantly looking at destroying what you already have and building something new, cannibalizing what you're doing, somebody's going to cannibalize you. I mean,
mm.
that's just the way it's going to be.
Well, beautiful. So entrepreneurial spirit, I think one of the main things that keep coming over and over again, it being consistently and continuously learning and evolving. And if we need to have a little bit of psychology, we know that we only use less than 10% of our power, right?
Yeah.
So we can continue discovering on that. So I really think like we're gonna grab out today, and we know that we have key topics. We can bring Mark back. So I want to
Yes.
go to the part of 5-second games. I actually asked some questions that I got from the audience, and now we kind of grab it up and bring it to the level of very practical takeaways. So I asked some question, and you will be answering in 5 seconds, or let's say in a short time as you can. So we
Okay.
can take that package to bring home, maybe put it in the notebook, and then take action. So if you had to choose an idea that you had, because you said you're like a machine, like a popcorn, right? Having a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
If you had to choose one, what was the craziest idea that you had?
Wow, that's a hard question to answer. Quite craziest idea I ever had. I'm sorry to say this to you, but I'm so practical. I've not had any ideas that people say, "Oh my God, that's insane. Like, who would even do that?" So I'm boring that way. I wish I could, tell you that. I don't have any.
Let's choose the one that you can turn it to become a business in the shortest time. Yeah.
Oh, so I wrote a book called Consulting University.
Mhm.
Consulting and how to build a consulting practice. And right after I wrote it, I could turn it into a business where I taught people how to be consultants. So it was easily executable. I mean,
Mm.
you always look for businesses that don't require a lot of steps. Less steps mean better chance for success.
Oh, so the second question would be the first thing people should try or should do to turn an idea to become an action and a result.
Write the plan.
Okay, and especially financial plan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Okay,
writing the
yeah.
plan is the big first step. Putting that on paper,
Mhm,
that's going to get you in the right direction.
mhm. If a person has to find another person, as you said, maybe something that not require a lot of stuff would turn to become reality more effective. But at some point, we still need somebody else, right?
Like
So,
a partner.
yeah, a partner. What would be that very first partner that a person should find?
Um, they should find a person who themselves is disciplined, resilient, hardworking like they are, and has great aspirations for doing something significant.
Yeah. So if somebody who asks where I can find that person, what would be your recommendation?
That person's usually right in front of you. You usually
Like a
have,
mafia.
yeah, usually you have friends and you don't want to be in business with a friend, but usually people that they know you and they know what kind of personality you are, and they
Mm,
know who to match you up with. I mean, I think that's why arranged marriages actually work well for a very long time because your
mm,
parents know who you are
mm,
and know what kind of personality you best match with.
mm.
So I think that that's the case. So you can find that partner from anywhere. But usually if you tell people I'm looking for a partner, they know who you are and they
Okay.
can help you find him or her.
Okay. So it's like what you did with the new podcast that you just wrote down and people in your university just jump in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now
So put it out there. Yeah.
every day now, publicists contact me literally every day trying to get their clients on the show. I mean, hence I'm booked all the way to the end of 2024
Yeah.
without,
Congratulations.
doing anything. And knock on wood, I'm lucky that way.
Because you work and you prepare
Yeah.
and then things
Well,
come
they're
come.
surprised I actually read the books. That's the one thing every author says. You actually read the book.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that when you say that you read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good feeling, right?
Yeah. I said I read every single person's book or else I couldn't ask the questions because it bothered me when I was being interviewed for my books and and sometimes the interviewer would say, can you give me a list of 10 or 20 questions I could ask you? Like, why don't I just interview myself?
Okay, I didn't read your books today, but I read it through your sharing. So
Yeah.
what would be the book that you recommend us to read after today to really ignite the entrepreneurial spirit even more?
Oh my gosh, I'm so horrible at remembering titles of books. I mean, I'm really horrible at those
You can recommend
things.
yours.
No, I mean, and I'm bad at even remember my own titles. I always like screw up the titles. I could tell you what my books are about, but when it comes to, I mean, I'm just
Title.
lucky when they give it a simple name like Power Networking that
Uh-huh.
I can remember. But if you go to my site, if you go to YouTube and type in the best business minds, you'll see like amazing authors and amazing books to go
Uh-huh.
and read. And I curate all them. So I look at a lot of books before I let
What is
these
your
authors
favorite
come on.
author then?
What's that? My
The
favorite
favorite
author?
author.
Oh, easy, Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh wow,
by far
cool.
my favorite, followed by a Wharton colleague, Adam Grant, who's
Mm,
another brilliant
yeah,
guy. I like books with lots of research. And
yeah,
if you ask me my favorite business magazine, I would say Harvard Business Review.
yeah,
Again, I'm a research junkie, followed by Inc. magazine. I think
yeah.
they're great because I like to hear people's stories like you do when you're interviewing people. So
Mm,
I think those things are really I think magazines and books that have lots of research in them uh,
mm-hmm,
get your juices flowing and you come up with other ideas because of what you're reading. I think if you don't read, there's no way to come up with new ideas.
mm-hmm. Yeah, lovely. And especially you bring the practicality come with the science-based models or best practices. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you ask me like what's the craziest idea I ever had, I haven't had any, like everybody says I'm so practical and they're logical and so forth. But I
Mm,
remember some people have come to me with crazy ideas. So like
okay.
this guy came to me and said he wanted to buy two former ships, retrofit them into battleships
Mm,
and protect ships going around Africa because there used to be a lot of pirates there, and that he was looking to raise $500 million for
mm,
this startup. Now, think about that. He wants to raise 500 million and he's willing to sell somebody 50% of the company for 500 million. So it makes
mm-hmm,
the company worth $1 billion before you do anything. And nothing made sense about this business, but he was a former Navy SEAL. You had to take him kind of seriously.
mm,
I said, why would somebody give you 500 billion? I said, you do realize that when investors invest and they get 10 to 20 times their money in 5 years. So just do the math. It's
mm,
crazy. It's a crazy idea. And I also had somebody who wanted to do Slim Whitman sings Christmas songs. And Slim Whitman was this remote country singer. Like, who would care? This person was serious about raising money
mm.
to create this catalog of Slim Whitman singing Christmas songs.
Mm. I would also challenge them if they have crazy idea or crazy dream, even they are crazy enough. I borrow that from Elon Musk. Then probably gonna happen. But when you say that, I would see the gap of the execution and the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Let's go to the next one.
yeah, sure, sure.
The next one will be, what was the thing that you didn't know about yourself that you didn't know that you didn't know?
Oh, I guess what I didn't know about myself was that I would be as resilient as I am.
Mm,
Um, I just didn't know that that would be the case. I hadn't really been, put in a position through life until my father went bankrupt
yeah.
to feel any kind of, and even then it wasn't me being resilient. He had to be resilient.
Mm,
But once I graduated college and interest rates were 18 to 21% back in
mm.
1982, and I kept applying for jobs. I applied for 200 jobs before I got my first job.
Wow, you had a
200.
lot of like patterns of more than 30 and 40 times and 200.
Yeah,
Good
I
for
mean, it was
you.
terrible. I just kept getting rejected, rejected, rejected. And then I realized that forget about rejection. Think of it like basketball, where you just keep
Uh-huh.
throwing the ball up at the hoop, and eventually something's going to
Yeah.
sink. And
Mm,
that's how you had to look at life, is that you couldn't worry about the misses. You only could focus on the successes, or
mm.
you would just drive yourself crazy. I mean, even the most successful people have had many failures.
So let's talk about the one thing that we should do when we want to give up, when we get a lot of rejection. And maybe the next one would be the acceptance, but we stop even before that. What is that one thing that we should think of or we should do? to
should I
keep
pivot?
going on?
Should I pivot?
Uh,
Like, am I in the wrong, like, do I have a right idea, but I'm in the wrong place with it? So, learning how to pivot. I saw a woman entrepreneur named Yasmin Mustafa, and she created this button that women could push, and it would tell you where tell everybody where you are and you were in trouble. And it didn't really sell well. I mean, it sold 12,000, but she needed to sell 100,000 a month. So she migrated to hotels, and then the pandemic hit and she got wiped out of that. And then she changed it to where she's successful and raised another 15 million for people to have this button who work in risky situations like mental health workers and so forth. And now she's got a thriving business. So I think you
wow.
have to know when it doesn't make sense where you're going because you've given enough tries. Now you've got to adjust your course.
So learn to pivot. And how can the person, what is the thing that the person should do to keep the momentum or the motivation to do that pivot?
I think you have to go and do the research and say, where's the real problem that somebody is willing to write a check
Mm,
for? I mean, like my funding organizer, clearly nobody wanted to write checks for that. Like everybody thought, oh
mm,
my God, it's a great idea. You're gonna make a lot of money. I even had venture investors who were interested because they thought it was a good idea. But then when I couldn't get anybody to write me a check, then when you found out wasn't a good idea. So if
mm,
people went, years ago, back in the early 70s, somebody created the pet rock and they dressed up rocks and they did like $25 million in business. Crazy, right? That's not a problem it's solving. It's you created your own opportunity, but who would have guessed that that would be the case? So I
mm.
think you don't know, and you have to throw yourself out there and throw out your ideas and then see what happens. I mean, you take a look at music, right? Taylor Swift is this incredibly talented, successful young woman, but how many other people sing as well as she does? For some reason, there's millions of people around the planet like her voice and the way she puts together words, just
Yeah.
like authors,
Mm.
why is that
So many
author
great
better than
books.
the
Yeah.
other? Yeah.
Yeah. So what is one next dream that you have for yourself? Because today we're talking about turning dream to reality, and you talk about continuously learning and evolving. So what is your next dream so we can dream with you?
I have to say my next dream is to make a significant difference in the Vietnam entrepreneurial community. I really feel like I was brought here for a purpose. Like of all the places I could have ended up in, I ended
Mm,
up in Vietnam, and I wanted to come to Asia, and I wanted to be part of a community that I felt was getting ready to take off.
yes.
So I really feel that I'm at the place I should be at the time I should be here. And now it's my job to not sit on the couch, but to go push myself forward and do
Yeah.
things. So if I didn't go and say, listen, I'm going to start Asian founders and funders, and I'm going to start a virtual angel fair for Vietnamese
Yes.
entrepreneurs, and I'm looking to make a difference here. That's my next thing that I think will make me feel like the reason for getting up every day and making a difference.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm grateful because your wisdom and your experiences, your failures and your success, all these
A
things
lot of
will be
failures.
great, great, you know, treasure for all the people in Vietnam, no matter how they are, where they come from. And from today, I think I really like to bring you back on some other topics, and especially the topic of being persistent, because you have a lot of different numbers, more than 30, more than 40, more than 200. So if anyone here who not getting to the recession like around 10 or 20 or 30 times or 100 times, maybe that is the next goal for one of us. Especially we want to ignite the entrepreneurial spirit, because I think one of that is, as you said, is being resilient. And it's
Well,
very,
when you
yeah,
look at it, you look at great successes, and you don't have to be the smartest. You do have to be the most resilient. Mao conquered China, and he only spoke the language of 20% of the people. And his father and brothers thought that he was lazy, that he would never amount to anything. And he managed to do that. Danny DeVito is a very famous actor in the US. And he's 5'1" or 5 foot tall, and he's been a leading man in successful movies. There's no way you would think this guy could be that. So I kind of think in life, it's about showing up and realizing that you're going to get knocked down a lot. But if you don't get up off the canvas and just keep moving forward, there's no way you have any shot at being successful.
And we know that we are not alone. We know that we have Marc or audio books and the community of other people doing something similar to us who really like to bring that hope, as you said today. And I feel I like to use a word like it's really the hope combined with the action that we can take. So one challenge, like an action we can take with the feeling of positivity and possibilities and learning today, that you challenge our audience to go home today to do. What is that one challenge?
Yeah, I what's the one challenge that I would tell them? Take any idea that you have, doesn't matter what it is, and start writing on paper on how you're going to make that idea happen and do it. That's the challenge. Is don't talk about it because people talk. Go do it.
And if you find yourself talking about it a lot of times, which is the side that is important, and do the part of writing it down and do it, as Marc said, and knowing that you're going to feel it's bad in a way, but knowing that is how you turn it to the reality, like faster and better. And we know that we have Marc in Vietnam, and we know that we're going to meet Marc again, and
Of
we're going to
course.
meet you again, and we will love to hear from a friend who actually listened to the show conversation today and say that, oh, thanks to Marc, and I did that after I talk about it many times. So with that, I'm really grateful to have you here, and we see you soon.
I look forward to it. By the way, I want to tell you, one of the things I'm really impressed with about Vietnam is the large number of women entrepreneurs here. Like, if you notice, when we were at that event, 80% of the women, 80% of the entrepreneurs were women. In my entrepreneurship class, it was 70% women, and they were dynamic. And so whatever they're doing here in Vietnam, they're doing it well in terms of encouraging women to be all they can be. I mean, I hear it's not consistent throughout the country, but you really are moving in the right direction. And people have a can-do attitude in Vietnam. And Vietnam is, most Americans would be, most people around the world would be surprised how progressive Vietnam is in infrastructure and the intelligence of the people. I mean, it's an amazing country that's highly underrated that I expect great things from.
So thank you, because you want to bring it to be evaluated or to be appreciated as it actually can be. And
I hope so.
let's do it together. And we are here virtually, but also offline. And thank you, everyone, to be a part of today's conversation, to bring the hope to the action and then reality, so we can turn the dream to be the impact. So what is the next book, if we need to conclude today, the next book that you write?
What's the next book? I actually just submitted to the president of the university a book on entrepreneurship focused on Vietnamese entrepreneurs and how to go build any type of business that you want to. So, I mean, look, you're going to compete on a global basis. So you know, everything I do, everything I write about will be how to compete globally. But I'll be interviewing a lot of entrepreneurs in Vietnam so people can identify themselves and see that, hey, so-and-so did it, Phong did it, why can't I do it? So, you know, that's what I'm going to be hopefully doing over the course of the next year, if in fact they want me to move forward, is writing that kind of book.
Thank you. And that would bring another element of all the dynamic contents and wisdom you are putting out there, apart from podcasts and some classes and workshop. So with that, thank you, Marc, and everyone. And
thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope I'll come back again sometime.